Hi, today I'm going to show you how to make this darling paper picnic basket. My name is Claudette with theycallmemartha.com. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here and you're inspired by what I teach you, I would love for you to subscribe. And if you like my video, please give me a thumbs up. It does help me grow my channel and I do appreciate the feedback. So today I'm going to teach you how to make the new version of this basket. Last month I posted an Easter version of this basket, and the difference here today is that these baskets actually have movable handles, and I'm introducing two new sizes, the small size and the jumbo size. And all you need is cardstock and some brads and your basic paper crafting supplies. So if you want to go back and watch the videos for the Easter basket or get the dimensions or the written instructions for the paper baskets, I'll have it posted in the video description below, also with a link to my website. And then if you want to learn how to make the wood grain cardstock that I used to make this basket, I'll link up that video as well. So to do today's tutorial, you want to start with a piece of paper that is 8 1/4 by 8 1/4, and then you'll need 2 strips of paper that are 8 1/4 by 1 inch to make your handles. So that's all we need to get started. Okay, we're going to get started with our scoreboard, and we're going to make our first 2 scores on this side of the paper. So the first score is at 2 3/4. And my cardstock is really thick, so I'm working here with a bit of a heavy hand. And the second score is at 5 1/2. So again, 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. We're going to rotate the paper once to the left, and we're going to make those same 2 scores. 2 3/4 and 5 1/2. All right. Now from here, we're going to make, and I'm going to keep referring back to my scoring template. So we've just made these main scores here and here. So the vertical and the horizontals. Now we're going to work in the corners of each of the sides of paper. And we're going to make 2 score lines per corner. And the one thing I want you to be aware of is that we're not scoring all the way down the length of paper each time we score. I want you to stop at that first horizontal score line. As you can see here, there's no scoring in this middle panel. All right, so starting with our top left-hand corner, our first score line is going to be at 1 inch. And I'm stopping at that first horizontal score line. And my second score is going to be at 1 7/8. If you're not sure where that is, it's 1 mark before the number 2 on your scoreboard. So 1 and 1 7/8. And then on this side, we're going to do 6 2/3. And that measurement is 1 mark past a 1/4 inch. So 6 2/3. Again, I'm stopping at that horizontal line. And then a second score at 7 1/2. 6 2/3. I'm sorry, it's 7 1/4, not 7 1/2. Okay? And I'm going to take that all the way down to that horizontal score line. All right, now we're going to turn the paper so that this side is facing, or this end is on the top. So I'm just rotating it. And now I'm going to make those exact same score lines. So my first score is at 1 inch. And my second score is at 1 7/8, stopping at that horizontal mark. And then here, 6 2/3 and 7 1/4. All right. The last measurement we're going to make before we start doing our cutting is where I have marked with an M for middle. We just want to find the middle mark of this center panel. Since our paper is 8 1/4 inches wide, the middle would be 4 1/8. I'm just making an impression at the top and not scoring all the way down, just marking that middle section. Now I'm going to flip my paper over, and I'm going to make that same measurement in the middle at 4 1/8. Again, I'm just finding that middle point. All right, so we're finished with the scoring, and we're going to make 1 mark with our ruler, and then we're going to do a little bit of cutting. All right, so we're going to take a ruler and join this intersection of these two score lines, one on each side, right, with this point that we made at the middle. So I'm just taking my ruler, holding it at the corner here where it meets, and lining it up with that middle score line that I made. And I'm just making a pencil mark. And that's just a guide for me to know where to cut when I go to do the trimming here. And I'm going to repeat that on the other side as well. So finding where that, sometimes it's hard to see depending on your cardstock. I'm finding that intersection. I'm lining up that middle mark and making that line, and then I'm finishing it on this side. All right, so take your bone folder, and now we just want to fold and burnish the original score lines that we made. So in step 1, remember we did those horizontal and vertical score lines. I'm just folding and burnishing those. I'm not worrying about folding those individual ones that we did in each corner, but again, just the main ones. And so if you take the time to really line up your edges before you press down with your bone folder, you'll end up with a much more square finished product because your seams are lining up. Okay, so with a pair of scissors, we're gonna do a little bit of cutting here. I'm gonna start with the center section. So where we drew these diagonal lines, I'm going to make a cut from that middle mark up to that corner, stopping at the intersection. So essentially this is where we drew that pencil line, and I'm gonna repeat it over here. And I find working with a pair of long scissors is a little bit easier to use rather than, you know, little snippers, but it's totally up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. So after I've cut that diamond shape or triangular shape, I'm now going to come in and cut each one of these vertical score marks that we made, but I'm stopping again at that first score line. So I'm going to trim this one out, and it essentially drops that little piece of paper that we don't need. So I'm just going to pull that out and then come in and cut each one of these. And then I'm going to repeat this on the other side. Ink your edges if you like to do that. It's totally optional, but now would be the time to do it. So I'm pushing again, that point to the middle side of the basket, and I'm going to work with strips from either end. So I'm going to start with the 2 inside strips, and they're going to be joined together like this. And what we're going to do is glue them so that they come to a complete right angle. So not like this, but where we're joining the top and the side where they're completely flush. So I'm going to use a little wet glue. I prefer to use wet glue here rather than tape. I think tape breaks down over time, and it also doesn't really allow for movement. So with wet glue, I'm able to move this around and line it up before it sets. And so that allows me to make sure that those edges are perfectly connected. I'm just going to use a pen here to secure those together while it dries. And now we're going to go with the second set of strips on either side. So these are going to connect similar to what we did with the first ones, but they're going to connect just at these top 2 points. So they're going to connect something like that, where these 2 top points are touching each other. So I'm going to add a little bit of glue and touch those 2 points together, and then grab a clip. And if you want, you can pull off this excess glue, even though it dries clear. Sometimes it's a good idea to get it off your project. And then we have the last strips on either side. Now the difference here with the outside strips is when we join them together, we're going to join them so that they form a horizontal line. And also that you're not pulling them in too far or you'll pinch your basket. So just look for, and I'm going to go ahead and remove these pins now because it's already dried with my wet glue. So just look for the natural place for where those would normally fall without pinching the basket closed. And that's where you want to glue it. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of wet glue on this side and line them up. And then just pinch that closed so that while that dries, we can be working on the other side. I'm going to do it in the exact same way. Glue in between the point of the basket, which remember we started by pushing inside. So we're going to put a little bit of glue on that point, and then we're going to put a little bit glue on the next point. Let me unstick my glue here really quick. I love a fine point nozzle because it helps with control of glue, but sometimes it does get clogged. So a little bit of glue on each of these points, and then I'm going to pin them closed again, just so that they have time to dry. Just like that. Go ahead and repeat the other side. So once this dries, all you have to do is come in with little snippers and trim off this point right here that goes over the top of the rim of the basket. So I find it easier if you turn it over so that you're cutting from essentially the inside of the basket and you can see where it crosses over there. And then if you think like it needs more time to dry, you can still come back in with your peg and let that completely dry. I'm gonna do the same thing here.
All right, now we're going to move on to making the handles for our basket. And so I've taken 2 strips of paper that are 8.5 inches long by 1 inch wide. And what we're going to do is score each of these strips in half at 1/2 inch. And then we will fold them in half to form the handle. So doing it this way allows you to have kind of a thicker handle that's a little bit more sturdy, which is great when you're making a handle that is going to be movable. So since we're going to attach these handles with a brad to the basket so that we can move them up and down, we want to make sure that they're a little hardier than just a strip of paper. All right, now I'm going to fold each in half along that score line, and then using my bone folder, I'm going to make a nice crease along the strip so that we get a nice straight line for these handles. I'm going to repeat this on the other handle as well. And now I want to make sure that I glue the inside of the strip. Don't put too much glue. You don't want it oozing out, but you do want to make sure that you're gluing the strip together. It all adds to making sure that that handle is a little stronger. So here I'm just putting in some glue and I'm going to press both sides together and then make sure that I wipe off any excess glue that seeps out of the edge. I like to use a dry baby wipe to do this. It works really well, and because it's dry, it's not picking up any of the print from the paper or the cardstock that you've used. All right, so before I attach my handle, I do like to shape it a little bit. And to do that, I put the strip of paper between my bone folder and my thumb, and I'm just giving it a little bit of a pull, very much like what you would do with wrapping paper ribbon that you were trying to curl. And it just gives the paper a little bit of shape. And I like to do this while the glue is still wet, because as that glue dries, it actually helps keep that shape of the curled paper here. Next, I'm going to use my Crop-A-Dile to make a hole at the end of each strip. So I like to put my hole about 1/2 inch from the bottom edge, and then I'm centering it in the middle of the strip. And I'm using the small side of my Crop-A-Dile to make this hole. And then what I like to do is use that hole as the guide for the other side of the strip. And I'm just going to use a Sharpie marker to mark what that hole is. And I'm using green just because it's a little easier to see here on my dark cardstock. But then I use that template for the next strip, mark the holes with my marker, and then I know that all of the holes in my strips are exactly the same. So again, I'm going to use the smallest hole on my Crop-A-Dile to now come in and finish making all of these holes. So using my Crop-A-Dile, also using that smallest hole, I'm going to make the holes in my basket. So I want to make sure that all of the holes are exactly in the same place on each corner of the basket. So I'm doing 1.25 inches from the edge of the basket and about 1/2 inch from the top edge of the basket to mark a hole. And I'm going to repeat this on all 4 sides. All right, using my Crop-A-Dile, again with the smallest hole, I'm going to punch the hole for each one of these marks. Now, just make sure that when you're using a Crop-A-Dile, you remember that there's 2 sides to it, and you don't want to punch a hole on the opposite side of the basket with the back end of that Crop-A-Dile. So just make sure of that as you punch your holes. So I'm just going to go around and punch all 4 of these holes. Make sure that you clear out your Crop-A-Dile every once in a while so that you can see where you're actually punching. And then I'm going to repeat this on the opposite side. And then we're almost finished. All we need to do is attach our basket handles. And I'm going to use some brads to do this. I used brads years ago and put them away on my shelf and kind of forgot about them. And when I was designing this basket, I thought brads would be perfect here because they would allow the handle to move back and forth. So here I'm just selecting a few brads that match my basket. I'm going for a smaller size because my basket's on the smaller side. And I'm just going to use each brad to attach the handle to each side of the basket on both sides. So you might want to come in and ink this edge where you clipped the top of that basket. Just as a tip, totally optional, but it helps create more of a finished product. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to line up the hole from my handle with the hole in the basket and put the brad through and do it on the opposite side as well. And then I'm going to repeat this on the other side of the basket with the second handle. And what's really cool about using brads like this is you could use something, you know, very decorative here if you wanted to, if you were going for a certain kind of look. Or you can use something really simple like what I've done here, something that kind of matches the cardstock. So I'm putting in the last brad and opening the prongs. And then this little basket is finished. You can use it for a little gift. You can embellish the front, kind of similar to what we did with the Easter basket. Or
you can just use it for a decoration. I think they're super cute. And again, this is the small version. The larger version goes together the exact same way. The only difference is it uses a larger piece of paper. And just as a reminder, all of these dimensions are on my website, which I've linked in the video description box. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And if you did, please do subscribe and please give me a thumbs up. Thank you. Have a great day.